Hello, YouTube. I'm planning on making a full review or dissection or deconstruction or whatever you want to call it of Stefan Molyneux's book about ethics called Universally Preferable Behaviour, which was issued in 2000 and I'll have to actually check up on that. I think it was 2006 or maybe 2007, but I'll get back to them when I take on the actual book. But if I'm going to do a critique of a book about philosophy, I find it very important that I first present my own philosophy in a sort of simple, down-to-earth manner that can be referred to. And I'm hopefully not going to equivocate words which are probably impossible, but at least viewers will be able to go back and see what I mean. With reference to this video, here is sort of a part 0 of the critique, and I'm just going to dive directly into it. There's sort of 3 main categories of philosophy, and there's sort of subcategories, or maybe even sort of small categories in between, maybe that could be discussed. But it's basically foundationally, it's metaphysics. The next thing you can do is knowledge called epistemology, and then you can go out and do ethics. So it's basically if you have this experience, and how do you interpret that experience? Is everything just me experiencing, or could some of it be something outside myself that other people can sort of participate in, quote, right? So metaphysics tries to figure out what aspects of your experience are always the case when you are experiencing, because everything that changes in your experience must somehow be related to knowledge. And that can sort of be discussed how that would turn up. And sort of, this is very broad overview just to get an idea where I am in relation to what Stefan writes. So my idea is that everything you experience is in your mind. And I am placed here, so you can see this is my whole experience. Everything is there. Before we sort of point out anything within that experience, this is the sort of the yellow area is my experience, and then there's a sort of black hole in the middle where I do not have experience. And the light blue area is my body, and on my body there are sensory I'm missing a word there. Sensory objects, you know the word, sensory. There are 5 senses on the sort of periphery of my body, and these 5 senses are responsible, at least to some extent, for what is on this canvas of my experience, or this screen of perception, or this cognition. Sort of the whole thing could be called an sort of a screen of perception. But then you could argue that some of that, what is present on your screen of perception, has additional stuff that the mind brings itself that are not really experienced, even though it might feel that way. So it's sort of a complicated business doing in-depth metaphysics, and I won't do that here, but I will just refer you to my video where I go in depth in 46 minutes about metaphysics, called Metaphysics, Idealism Without Woo-Woo. And there's a much deeper expression of what I mean. But basically, I think there's a screen of perception where the whole thing is. Then cognitive abilities of my mind pinpoints certain things like your elephant, sun, bicycle, whopper, beautiful woman, whatever, right? Woman, beautiful is whatever, forget it. These objects are sort of floating in this experience, and some of the experience is that you can have two versions of the same concept. Like if we take an elephant, you can have the idea of the elephant and you can have the experience of the elephant. Or like in a Humean distinction, which is impressions and ideas. I'm not necessarily crazy about those terms, but the impression I like, but the idea is something that is more. These terms have been changing through the years, and idea might not be the optimal term to use for that. But let's say that the concept of elephant is the foundation of these two sort of experiences. You can have the idea of the elephant and the impression of the elephant, but it's basically the same thing we're dealing with. But sometimes you could say you have the idea of the elephant, or sometimes you have the sort of real elephant, right? And what I would call reality are those concepts that are the impression of the concept, not the idea of the concept, right? It's not the idea of the elephant that is real. It's the experienced sort of when I have the sense data of the elephant. And how I decipher which is which is the experience must have some kind of reference to a sense data, at least one. It must have a color, it must have a taste, not every, it must have a color and or a taste and or a sound and so on, 5 senses, right? And I believe there's only 5 senses, but somebody might challenge me on that. But at least these 5 senses are what gives me sort of a connection to something that is a different kind of concept than the idea of elephant, let's say, right? So what I say could be claimed as knowledge is only that which can be or not be. Either it's there or it's not there. And that means it's only the concept, not whatever sense data is related to the concept, right? It's not the grayness of elephant that is the case, or that can be true, or that can be knowledge, but it's the elephant that is knowledge. You know elephant, but you don't know gray, or you don't know whatever else sound or taste of elephant, because that is a matter of degree. The color of the elephant or the sound of the elephant is not necessarily particular to that. I mean, grayness is something that can be everywhere, so to say, right? In potentially, right? It's not particular to elephant, but elephant is particular to elephant. There's nothing else that is elephant, because otherwise that which would be the same would be within the same category. So the category of elephant, let's put it that way, the conceptual category is a binary thing, in that either you are experiencing that elephant or you are not experiencing that elephant. And if we go to the next slide here, let me see if I can get to that. 1 second. That's why I say that the define, and excuse me for this, but these are definitions that are work in progress. So, and I state that beneath my definitions here. But my definition of knowledge is my conscious recognition unwillingly derived from my immediate impression. So my immediate impression is the impression of elephant, right? It's the lively version of this concept elephant. But I am not telling myself, I'm not able to say I should be experiencing the impression of elephant. I could say to myself, I want, juggle with the idea of elephant. I could do that anytime I want. I can imagine elephants right now, but I can't will an impression of an elephant, right? There's no impression of elephant around me now. I don't have that impression. I don't have that, the strong version of the elephant, let's put it that way. So it's unwillingly derived from my immediate impression. If there's an impression, then that elephant will be derived, but it will be derived from my conscious recognition. I could be, when I am experiencing, I am cognizing or recognizing various concepts as I go around, and only the part of only the conscious part of my thinking is that which recognizes the concept. This may be something I have to, fiddle a little with. I'm still working on it. But it's like when you go to work and you're driving the same route every day, night and day, sort of every day, one day after the other. And sometimes you could, if you know that situation, you went to work. And when you got to work and you start thinking of, or somebody asks you, what did you experience on your trip? And you say, I really didn't experience anything. Right? I didn't experience. And then they could say, okay, I can dig up something that, there was some trees, but was it because these trees were there last year or yesterday, or was it because you actually experienced those trees? So if you are sort of focused on, if you go to work someday and you say, I'm going to experience all I can here, I'm going to recognize as much as I can, you would have a much larger story about your conscious recognition, because your consciousness was on a sort of a autopilot or low level cognitive level, when you were sort of just going about for the God knows which time going to work. So the consciousness is sort of a focus instrument that says I'm going to focus on this part of my cognition now. So that's why I'm saying it's my conscious recognition of elephant, but it's unwillingly derived from my immediate impression. And that immediate is very important, because it has to do with the sense of time, that my past is just an imagination of some kind, and the future is an imagination of some kind, which is in the now. So if I have a memory of something, that memory is in the now. It's no longer the past, even if I call it a memory of the past. So it's not the past because I'm experiencing it now. And the same thing with an imagination about the future. So if I experienced an elephant yesterday, that is no longer an immediate impression. That's a memory. So it has become a kind of an idea. So it's no longer knowledge, right? And in the future, I can imagine all sorts of things. That doesn't mean it's knowledge. It's only knowledge when I have that immediate impression. And that is, I think that my car is going to be outside tomorrow. I don't know it, but I'll find out tomorrow. And when I get out tomorrow, I will, either know the car is there, or I won't know the car is there, so to say, right? Okay. So what is interesting to get at is objectivity, which is the step from your own knowledge to handling knowledge between individuals. And that between individuals is where ethics comes in, because it's a recognition that there are other people or other individuals like yourself, potentially, and that we are sort of, let's say, competing for the same object. So who's going to get that object? Is it me? Is it the other one? Should we share? Should I kill him? So sort of these ideas. Is there a way to think about these things in a way that makes sense? And to me, objectivity is a very important aspect of getting to ethics and a moral principle, which is sort of the condensation of your thinking, called ethics. But you have to sort of find an agreement of what is going on. Otherwise, you can never get an agreement, right? So it's baked in the cake, so to say. A proposition is an expressed claim of knowledge. If I say, that's an elephant, I'm making a proposition. But the point is, if I'm claiming knowledge, somebody else hearing or experiencing or analyzing my language, the sounds I make as language, and identifying this proposition, does not have my recognition. They don't have my impression. So they don't know if I'm lying, which is expressing a claim of knowledge that you do not have. So other individuals do not have my impression, so they can never know if my proposition is true for me. But they know if the proposition is true for them, but I don't know whether the proposition is true for them. So there's a big problem, sort of a matrix of potential outcomes of the understanding or the agreement on a proposition. But if I say that's an elephant, or somebody else says that's an elephant, I say it's true, I am claiming an affirmation of the correctness of the proposition. Therefore, truth is an affirmation of the correctness of a proposition. That's all it is. It's a conclusion about a proposition. It's not something you experience. Truth is not a part of your experience. It's simply an affirmation. You don't. If I experience elephant, I don't need to make the proposition, at least not express it. But for it to be knowledge, I know that elephant. I don't have to propose anything. I just experience elephant, and that's my knowledge. But let me see if I can keep the overview. If I think the proposition, I can think whether or not it's true. I don't have to express it, but I can think the proposition to myself and know whether or not it's true. But the point is, if I already know, why would I propose? Why would I make a proposition? And if nobody else around me can know whether or not I'm lying, why would they need my proposition? Or why would they, if they were the guys or the person make the proposition, they would be in the same situation. So it sort of condenses language into basically either it is an attempt at get to objectivity or it's manipulation. If you can't settle objectivity, then there's only manipulation left, right? And the manipulation is, okay, if there's an external to me, there's an object I want, there's another individual, I'm going to manipulate this situation so I get what I want. So no matter what the situation may be for the other individual or individuals, right? So there's a very big hurdle about getting to objectivity, which I would describe as an agreement between two or more individuals on the correctness of a proposition. It's actually quite simple when you boil it down to this. Okay, and next, the last slide is, I would define ethics simply as the philosophy needed to define a moral principle. And I might add that, maybe I should have defined that early on, that I consider philosophy the thinking about how you think. It's sort of a meta thinking in the sense that if I think about going to work, I need to have some food, I need to get some clothes on, I need to get out the door, I need to remember my keys, I need to stick the keys in the car, I need to open the door or whatever, and press these pedals and do and drive, and sort of that's thinking on a very low level, so to say. It's nothing wrong with it, but it's not sort of philosophy. Philosophy comes in when you start to think, why do I need the key? Why must I go to work? What is work, right? What is a car? When you start to think in this fashion, you're doing philosophy. So it might not be the strongest or most clear and concise way of dealing or defining philosophy, but at least it sort of gives you an idea where my thoughts are about it. So, but again, it's a definition. The definitions are works in progress, most of them at least. as I have written below the definitions. But ethics is the philosophy needed to define a moral principle. So philosophy, ethics is all about thinking and nothing else. A moral principle, and this is the most fluffy definition I have so far, a definition of how to interact with other individuals based on objectivity. So, and this is a very fluffy definition that I'm probably going to, change over time, but at least objectivity is an agreement between two or more individuals on the correctness of a proposition. So it sort of reaches back through my definitions when you get to ethics. So, and you get all the way back to metaphysics and the understanding of that. So doing ethics is not just like jumping into the river and start thinking about moral stuff and ethics and whatever. You have to start at understanding of metaphysics and work your way up, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's going to be a piece of junk. So that's my introduction of my sort of a low down and dirty version of my philosophy as it stands at the moment. And I hope it is useful. At least I think I try to be very clear and very sort of, handling the three large components of philosophy in 3 slides is not necessarily easy. But I think I have the advantage that I'm usually pretty good at condensing things down to their sort of basic component and truncating into the essence of it. So it's sort of, it gives an easy entry into understanding what we're dealing with. So, but it's probably far from perfect, but at least it gives you an idea of where I stand. So you're not thinking that when I make this critique of universally preferable behavior, I'm just pulling something out of my ass, right? So see you later. Have a nice time. Goodbye.